I'm Richard Fitzgerald. This is Dubai Works, where we interview the business leaders making a difference in this great city.
That business with scalability was very interesting to me.
I like building something that has legacy.
Exactly why we do Dubai Works, to find entrepreneurs like Sanjay who built business stories that have been behind the scenes building their businesses, in this case for a couple of decades. It's got everything. It's got hotel management background, restaurant turnaround, food passion, and then building the biggest catering business in India for weddings, etc. So much in this interview. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, enjoy the conversation. We have the founder and managing director of Foodlink, Sanjay Vazirani, and we're going to be talking about how Foodlink started in 2003 with the objective to drive excellence in the Indian food and beverage service industry. And within the last year, they've expanded to Dubai, which is why we're here. They've had astounding reviews from both industry and the general public. So we're going to talk about Foodlink. What is it? Also, we'll talk about the catering industry and market and what Sanjay and his team have in store for the future. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in, Sanjay.
Fantastic.
So nice to meet you, and tell us a little bit about your story.
So back in 2003, when we started Foodlink, it was, after I finished my hotel management school, I got into a management training program at a Holiday Inn hotel there. And then after finishing the program, I joined a restaurant, a standalone restaurant as a restaurant manager. And soon, I got into, fixing sick units, the restaurants which were not doing well. I somehow landed up becoming an expert at reviving that. And at a point, I was called a sick, restaurant doctor. And while I was fixing one of the sick restaurants in the central suburbs in Bombay called Chembur, the owner proposed to me that why don't you, do this, take this restaurant on lease from me and run this restaurant. And that is where the first business for us in nearly 2003 started.
Okay.
After we, took that restaurant, we revived it and started doing extremely well for us. And what we knew then was to do good food, good Indian and local, Chinese cuisine very well. And as I had graduated out of a hotel management school, all my batchmates had joined larger groups like the Hyatt or the Taj or the Oberoi's. And when they would visit my restaurant, they would come and tell me that this is fantastic food. And why don't you bring it to, south of Bombay, where the high net worth individuals and the spenders were. So that's where the thought of, starting an outdoor catering unit came to my mind, that if we have the good food, why not take it to people if I can't get them to the central suburb, which is very far off the South Bombay where the target audience was. And, we got some opportunities to do small caterings, and we took this food there and we got instant, recognition.
Wow.
As a small catering company, and that is where the inception of Foodlink happened.
Amazing, brilliant story. I love it, and well told. I love it from the education point of view, and then the sort of organic growth you're learning inside the restaurant. But you weren't the chef; you were more the operations person, working with the food as well.
So I had joined the School of Hotel Management to be a chef, actually, and I trained to be a chef during my majority of my management training program. And because I could, understand the nuances of the kitchen, it made it a little easy for me to do what I do till date. Unfortunately, once you start business, then your core for which I wanted to, I joined the hotel management school. Except for that, I keep doing all the rest. It's about fundraising, it's about managing people, it's about managing the whole spectrum of business now.
Yeah.
But I surely want to retire as a chef when I finish, this growth of my company to a point.
Glad we discussed that. So you do have passion for food. You like food. You like Indian food.
Absolutely, I do.
So can you talk a little bit more about, before we get to Dubai, what is it like running a business in India? What's it like running an Indian restaurant in India? Is it competitive? Obviously everyone around the world knows Indian cuisine, but what's it like there? And is it the same as running a restaurant anywhere?
So, ours is a metamorphosis of growth. When we started business, the dynamics was very different around nearing 2 decades back.
Okay.
We started with this, sick unit, which we revived. We, set up our catering outfit from that small kitchen. We would do smaller parties. As things went on, we started to get opportunities with, other locations where we could operate a restaurant, or where we could run in a club, a location where, we could get to do little outdoor catering. The difference, definitely India, there's a very unique and a peculiar ecosystem which is offered, and it's highly competitive, the Indian food, because in India, everybody knows and understands deeply the Indian food. But at a point, subconsciously, we developed a differentiator. We created a differentiator with the way we run our food service. Wedding catering is a huge thing in India, and it's a tremendously a big market. 50 billion market while we speak is only the wedding business in India.
Which currency?
Indian rupees, maybe. And it's not only India, but it is affected, or it's intending to affect the economies of a lot of other countries, whether it's Europe or whether it's UAE. Far East is also one of the locations where, because when a Indian wedding goes out, it touches upon the tourism, the hotel business gets in, local taxis get engaged. I know of some recent huge weddings we did at Lake Como in Italy, and 600 top Indian business or high net worth people went there. So the branded stores like the Louis Vuitton and the others were running out of the goods, because there's a huge shopping spree, and there was a big spurt in the economical situation for those 3-4 days when we went there. So I think back in India, opportunities, it's a huge country, lot of marriageable people, becoming more and more marriageable, as it's a young population. So we're very well poised to do what we're doing back in India.
Okay, and just a little bit more about, I like that analogy about the restaurant sick doctor turning it around, because people can understand outside that analogy, outside of the F&B industry, turnaround people or cost cutters or things like that. What were your learnings? Like, people listening in Dubai might think that they might know restaurants that didn't take off in the way that they wanted to. What's your approach to, providing medicine to these sick restaurants?
So this was back then, I think most of the businesses which scale or which become big, we wouldn't be able to articulate it then when I used to do it, specifically this work for my living. Basics, sticking to the basics, the good food, the good service, and the good ambience. If you get this right, there's very rarely a restaurant can fail, which a lot of, big investors and top quality entrepreneurs who want to be in F&B space do not get it right. So every time we got a restaurant which wasn't working, either in numbers or the guest satisfaction or the staff, satisfaction index used to be very low, we would just go and set the food right, set the service right, and get the ambience right.
Love it.
Yeah. So,
1, 2, 3.
You
make it sound simple. But it is true. It is true. And I think people can relate in other industries as well. And I like how you said the ambience as well, because that's the culture. And, you can have a robotic like perfect service, but it might feel soulless. Whereas if you don't have the flair of the ambience, with the customers will feel that the staff aren't really passionate about this as well. So you studied hotel management, and when you were telling the story, I thought, okay, now's the time he's going to go and work with Hyatt or Oberoi or whatever. But instead, you went into the catering part to provide for a different clientele. You didn't open a high-end restaurant outside the city in the suburbs. You did catering. And I was interested that you did it from the same kitchen. How did it evolve from there? Did you pivot, and is Foodlink now only a catering business?
So, I had a reason to do what I did. Back in the days, we had a very limited beginning. We from a small town had gone to a large city like Bombay, which we had never seen, and joined the hotel management school. And we had very limited resources. So while I started my business, Sick Unit, I could understand then that catering business is the only business where you don't need much of a working capital. Because of the limited resources. That was the only business that could have given us a 50% advance when we close a deal with a guest, and we take that advance and we would hire the CCG, the cutlery, crockery, glassware, whatever the paraphernalia you need to execute the event. And food we would cook from and it started very small, and then we built upon it as we got more popularity and more people started recognizing us.
Okay.
So that was, I think, at the back of my mind, the core reason that without capital, only business we could do then was the outdoor catering.
It's fascinating. That seems like, again, a simple thing, but it's like you have a natural flair for business, because that's such a capital, and the upfront payment is so important for cash flow. And is that something you think you picked up during a hotel management course? Like, is the education good for Indian cuisine and hotel management and for the service industry?
I think like any other business, education just gives you a basic orientation or a little awareness of what the trade is like. But eventually it's about the experience. It's about your, day-to-day dealing and interaction with the business, which makes you more prudent. After around nearing 17, 18 years of experience, we came to Dubai around 11 months odd back. And it was an experience with, very limited resources again, because back in India, the machineries had come to a grinding halt. And that's when I said, okay, let me take a small trip. We were under lockdown. I was sitting home all the time, and there was no way we could even go outside the home. And obviously, my wife wasn't very happy, me sitting and being very, edgy at home, not having anything to do. So I just told her I'd take a 7-day, there was a permission we could take and come to Dubai. And that's how I came in last September, October here for a small trip.
Yeah.
And then I stayed with a friend of mine who was very kind to, host me at his house at the Meadows here. And that's the time when I said, oh, this city looks, alive and open. There was no much restriction. There were little restrictions, but not so many. And there were good opportunities and deals available to either acquire a restaurant location or to take a catering kitchen.
Yeah.
And that's the opportunity which we looked at and moved our plan in Dubai.
So is that what you did? Did you acquire an existing, again, fixing something that wasn't working? Did you acquire you chose?
So our first restaurant was in Bar Dubai, which was, a existing restaurant. And we made a deal and we just did a little facelift and converted the kitchen, little equipment here and then, and set up our China Bistro brand. That's an Indian Chinese brand we run.
Yeah.
So the first restaurant, yes, we did take here was this restaurant which wasn't working for someone.
Okay. Interesting about the Chinese foods. I'm going to segue back because you mentioned that at the start. Chinese food is popular in India as well.
So after the number one cuisine that sells in India is Indian cuisine. And second most favorite after the home food and the Indian food is the Indianized Chinese food. That's the second best seller in entire India.
Can you explain Indianized Chinese foods for the uninitiated?
So, the history of that food goes that, during, many years, there were few Chinese families which got retained in India in Calcutta.
Yeah.
And they formed something called a Chinatown there.
Yeah.
And while they were cooking originally the original Chinese food, which is very bland and fairly non spicy, slowly the influence of the Indian spiciness and tanginess came into that food. And that food got modified and started getting called the Indian Chinese.
That's good to know.
So origin is from Calcutta, and slowly those chefs, came to other parts of India, and there were Chinese restaurants which started. And we perfected that. We went back to Calcutta, we did our research, and then we set up our China Bistro food, which is Indianized Chinese food.
Very good. Glad I asked. But are you more into the brands and the Chinese bistro food, and do you have an Indian brand, or is it the catering? And have you done catering yet in Dubai?
So, as our story went from one restaurant, then we went into, catering, and catering became a larger business because it was more about, at a time, 600, 800,000 people. And slowly, as money started trickling in, we learnt business little more. We set up our small catering kitchen. And back in India, we became wedding catering specialist. To the extent that last 3-4 years pre-COVID, the richest family in India, the Ambani family, to the super, stars from the Bollywood, Ranveer, Deepika, most of these weddings we got to cater.
Oh, brilliant.
Whether it was locally, 23 countries we have gone and executed Indian wedding.
So you said, Lake Como, so you've actually done the wedding remotely as well. I have a question on that, but how big are the big Indian weddings?
So back in India, I think, to have a number of 3,000 people attending a wedding or a 4,000 is a very common number.
Yeah.
It isn't very, shocking. Well, European parts and even in Dubai, to have a 2,000-3,000 people is rare. Back in India, as we grew, we were Bombay specific, because catering is a very territorial and a very personalized business. Because Indian wedding, everything can go wrong but the food.
Yeah.
And the prominence and the importance is so high that you have to be super, super focused on, every delivery you do. As beginners, we got that right, we learned. And then there's a huge religious dimension to certain communities who are very big spenders to the kind of food they do in a wedding. So, a pre-wedding, there's a particular kind of food you could only do, certain restrictions. There's certain communities who don't allow to use onion, garlic and underground stuff. Certain communities have certain things on day. So gradually we mastered that. Okay. And hence we were then, comprehensively wedding catering experts on the food of it.
But you touched on things can go wrong. My mum has been in the catering and food industry and has run restaurants, but she always tells me of a story of when she was in her early 20s and she was running a catering business in Dublin. And I don't know what it was for, but she was getting to the venue and she was in a smallish car and she had 7 or 8 cakes in the back seat. And she hit the back of a car at the traffic lights and all the cakes went everywhere in the car. So that's a kind of a scary story of what can go wrong when you're delivering foods outside of a kitchen. How do you kind of overcome those sort of things?
So, I think as we grew, we started thinking and curating and customizing a lot. So while we speak, if there's an event of say 3,000 people in Bombay at any of the large locations, then now we have an infrastructure where we build a proper satellite kitchen. We have mobile vans, which, one has a laundry wing, there's an ironing facility and hanging of chef coats and waiters' uniforms and the serviettes and the tablecloths. Wow. There's another van which carries around 300 raw ingredients, maybe a rice, a pulse or a spice there's another one which has a consumables in it, a tissue paper or a doily paper. So we virtually bring the infrastructure to the ground to be 100% correct. And we also get little efficient with that. There are less wastages. And if there's a last minute, if 2,000 people become 1,500, we don't have to run here and there, and we are able to then,
That's
so that happened over 1.5 decades. It took us 10, 12, 15 years to arrive at that kind of a situation which we are in today.
That's amazing. That's fascinating. Like, we think of to cater for that number of people might be in a big hotel, or it might be a function, or it might be a concert or something like that. But usually they would have pop-up facilities, like a concert, they would have pop-up at the event, whereas you're actually coming in and out quicker than that, and you're doing it yourself. There's not so I didn't even think of it like that. It's fascinating. So, and how you explained it is very efficient, and all the different parts that go in, it's not just the food, and that keeps the quality high.
Absolutely.
Amazing. So is that the business that you also want to bring to Dubai as well?
So Dubai, we have a very, very clear-cut, blueprint of what we want to do in Dubai. What we did in Dubai, we realized after doing the first outlet that there's a huge demand not only for the dine-in but more for the delivery business. So we've come up with something called a hybrid version of the restaurants now. The China Bistro, our Chinese, Indianized Chinese food brand, which has a humongous acceptance here, luckily for us, also has a high-end cloud kitchen called Art of Dum.
Okay.
Now, Art of Dum is a 300-year-old cooking technique of the Indian cuisine, which we have again perfected, and we have, dressed it up with very unique, packing. So Art of Dum goes everywhere. We do a China Bistro now. While we speak, we have set up 6 restaurants in 10 months and a boutique catering kitchen from where we also deliver Art of Dum food. It's a Northwest Frontier menu, and that also has worked out very well for us.
Wow.
So the hybrid, we are able to sweat the asset, and the same kitchen also does food production for us for smaller caterings at Emirates El Villa,
Okay.
or maybe. So in the wedding side of business, as I said, we have a clear blueprint. We have the restaurant and the hybrid and the delivery business as one part. We have the Indian wedding because we are wedding catering specialists. And before I moved here, last pre-COVID 3, 4, 5 years, we used to come and do half a dozen weddings every year, whether it was at a Waldorf Astoria in Ras Al Khaimah or Emirates Hills at Abu Dhabi, the Emirates Palace Hotel. So that takes a little different treatment. Hotel gives us the support when we do an Indian wedding. They give us a extended kitchen or maybe some space in their kitchen. We bring our culinary experts and we cook the food. We bring our raw material, the specialty raw material, which is not available in Dubai. So we are taking that business model forward for the Indian wedding here. What we have done is we have tied up with a few hotels already, and we have also catered likes of Burj Al Arab. Recently we did a Indian catering, and we did 100% of our food in one of the banquet halls. Versace Plaza, which is a very famous hotel here, has allowed us to remodel their banquet kitchen to the need of the Indian food which they need to give to the Indian weddings. So we did a few weddings, and we have a lot of weddings booked in the next 12 months. At Raffles, we are doing a buyout. The most fascinating, which I'm very excited about, event which we are catering here in January, is below the Dubai Iron. We are doing a 800 people event. For an Indian wedding. It's a musical night.
Amazing.
And we are doing pop-up of some good, our own restaurants and some likes of Nobu and Cipriani.
Cool.
And we are doing a fantastic event.
So that will be, because there's a nice area outside
there's a
there.
deck below the Dubai Iron.
Which is a stunning backdrop.
Yeah.
Cool wedding. Lucky people.
We are looking forward to it, actually.
You described moving to Dubai about starting really small, but actually you've been in and out. This is one of the 20-something countries that you've done venues at. So I was going to ask, has it come from word of mouth? Are your clients sort of wealthy Indians who live in Dubai who want to have their weddings here? Or is it more a case of that you kind of have to generate marketing and spread word of mouth here to get the business?
So catering is clearly word of mouth. If you deliver a fantastic wedding, the high net worth individual people will only recommend you when they trust you 110%. Maybe 150 if they have to recommend you to somebody. So we get recommendations. Early days, pre-COVID, we have a local gentleman, Mr. Rizwan Sajan. His son Adil's wedding we had catered. It was a case study, actually. We catered on a cruise liner.
We had him on the show,
Oh, did you? Okay. So Adil's wedding was unique. We have a lot of case studies over these 2 decades where we have been into the wedding catering businesses. So Adil's wedding was at a Costa cruise, which, it's a Muslim family. Kebabs and curries and rotis are the bare minimum they would want at a good wedding. And 800 high net worth individuals, locals and high net worth Indians were on that cruise. And the cruise, we were not allowed to use a coal or a flame directly because cruise restrictions on, and Indian food you can't do without those two. So then we went back, my teams went to Barcelona where the cruise was parked, and we went and checked the gadgetry, and we checked the electrical installations in that cruise, and we fabricated equipment which on electrical side could emulate or replicate the same flavors of kebabs and the curries and the rotis which we could do.
Wow.
And that was a 3.5 day. It started from Barcelona, the event. It was filled with, Dubai had a lot of Bollywood stars and, good people. And 3.5 days, it was more of a culinary journey, which we could give them the experience as much as it was about, from Barcelona to Cannes to, Marseille to Savannah, Port, Italy. The event ended after 3.5 days.
Wow. I think that's business development for the next 10 years with the clients that you had there.
There are a lot of case studies like that, because out of passion, we enjoy the more challenging, assignments like these.
Yeah.
We have had stories, in St. Moritz in Switzerland. We were catering for 500 people, and because highest a hotel could accommodate was 80 to 100 people. So we had to make a base kitchen outside, and only place we could get was a frozen lake on which we had to make a kitchen.
Wow.
And we executed that to perfection. Hats off to my team, actually. They are brilliant.
Yeah.
And last day, event was to get over. 4 hours before that, my executive chef and a couple of guys who were managing that kitchen sensed that, this wouldn't last for long. And they started evacuating the kitchen.
Yeah.
And by the time the last working table was lifted, the whole ice fell through, and it could have been our kitchen in the water then.
No one was harmed. No food was lost. The fishes didn't eat. The kitchen was moved.
Had some fantastic case studies.
What sort of team do you have? Is it on a project base? You bring people in, and obviously at that level of cuisine, you need to almost compete with the high-end restaurants for the executive chefs. Like, how do you recruit the talent, and what sort of size team do you have?
So over the time, we've realized that a food service company of our kind and caliber, food is the hero. Whether you run a richest man's son's wedding, or you run a fast casual diners like our China Bistro, India Bistro, which we already have in Dubai. Food has to be the best. So what I have gone back doing, we have, a talent capital, I call it. The top 12 chefs of each genre, say a Japanese master chef or Italian master chef, or within Indian, the modern Indian culinary expert. I have a team of these guys back in Bombay who are part of our organization. And they keep doing research and development, and they figure out what's coming next, what could be the next thing. And hence we have also, with that virtue, become curation experts. So if a high net worth individual guy never wants to repeat a menu, never wants to repeat a style, never wants to repeat a concept, and we have become specialists of that by the virtue of the talent pool and talent capital we have back there.
Okay. Always kind of inventing new concepts and experimenting.
Yeah, we've always stayed ahead of curve on the culinary side of it, and hence Foodlink is what it is. So very humbly I'm putting, we were very humble start 17 years back, and today we are the largest food and beverage company in India while we speak.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What sort of, how do you measure that? Are you listed, or is it that by revenue, or is that by team size?
So it's by the team size, revenue, followed by the team size, followed by the number of locations we are present in.
Yeah, the reach that you have.
The catering business has been territorial because it's mom and pop shop. We are the first, company in India which has digitalized the business completely. We have very strong and robust back-end integration. We have ERP in business. We have complete transparency across, we use softwares like the Salesforce, which, is an international
CRM,
software which it does CRM and does multiple things and enables us to run restaurant catering business with a lot of systems and processes. We have worked very hard on mass personalization because when we talk of 2,000 people, high net worth individual. And similarly, we have a wedding going on in Bombay and then in Delhi, then in 5, 7 at a time. So the personalization, luckily the leadership team at Foodlink, the DNA and this huge imbibing of this personalization, which has become the culture of the company.
Yeah.
And that's helped us to be who we are today.
Amazing. It's interesting that COVID sort of was the trigger point for you coming to Dubai. But do you think that would have happened eventually? When you said 17 years, it reminds me of, we had someone who was involved with bringing Five Guys to the UAE, and the history of the Five Guys story was one burger shop for 17 years, same number, before they opened their second chain. So I always think of people when they're trying to expand too soon, like there's so many things that can happen in those first 2 decades to get everything fine-tuned, like you described. But there are many famous Indian restaurants in Dubai. There's many famous Indian chefs in Dubai. You must have been tempted to come sooner.
We always wanted to come to Dubai. I have been coming in and out. We've been coming and doing weddings, but India by itself is a huge consumption story.
Yeah.
So the mentors, the advisors I have today always guided me that you should finish, your one territory and go to the next. And India was so large.
True.
It took us a while.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, we were about finishing and the 5th location in India of our presence. And COVID came. We had to, defer that a little. Machinery was stopped. I came here and, we have set this up as one of our, added, regional. Yeah. And from here, we as I said, would get affiliation with a lot of hotels. Also, what also worked in our favor is that back in India, still people are not they're fairly nervous about large celebrations. While Dubai Tourism Board and the government has demonstrated that, it's safe. They are following the protocol.
Yeah.
Everything is in fine. They have done such successful expo.
Yeah.
It's giving a lot of inspiration and confidence to a lot of Indian families to come and celebrate here.
Yeah.
And once they hear 2-decade-old company of India, leading, catering companies available here already as a region, regional office, it's very easy for us to attract.
Okay.
So nearly a dozen weddings we have already got in the last 1.5, 2 months. Once they have known that we've opened a central kitchen here, we are able to work in the hotel with a lot of ease. Earlier, we were mobilizing 150 people to execute a wedding here. Now we need to mobilize only 30, 40 specialists, special butlers or particular specialists from, regional side who we don't have as a capacity here. So it's working out for us. India coupled with this is a good synergy balance for us as business.
Definitely. Yeah. Sanjay, we mentioned it's a competitive landscape in India, but what's your assessment of catering industry in the UAE? Do you need to be specialized? Obviously you're taking the Indian cuisine approach, but there are very big weddings already happening in the UAE. There's local weddings, there's Gulf diaspora expat weddings, there's lots of different things. What's your assessment of the competition? How many companies are there? How big they are there main players and things like that?
So in Dubai, it's of course we have thought of the verticals which we want to, at what time start focusing on. So instinctively, the wedding catering, of course, comes naturally to us, and we are already set because hotel also does give a lot of support when we do a wedding. We don't need an infrastructure which is unreally big. So weddings in the hotel. We also were able to, make the biggest, rather the epitome of catering here locally is the World Trade Center. So we already have been, we have a restaurant within the World Trade Center, an Indian restaurant. And the moment we made that Indian restaurant there, we also have now got a tie-up with the World Trade Center to give them the Indian catering side of it.
Very smart.
So even Expo, a little bit of our catering food goes via the World Trade Center.
Okay.
So we've identified different pockets. We have verticalized our catering, which is called Foodlink Boutique, which is super specialization from say 50 to 150 people, which goes into the villas, which goes into other venues where it could happen. So we have modeled it in such a way that with a very small capability of kitchen, utilizing the ability of the hybrid restaurants we have, we are able to do sizable caterings.
Okay, fascinating. I like your approach as well about the synergies, especially having a restaurant there first, and then you can use that kitchen. Something I touched on earlier about the hotels. I would have assumed that the hotels do their own catering. Is that not the case? They outsource it as well?
So what I see coming, if you go back 5, 7, 8 years, a lot of hotels were F&B specialists, but they still needed a specialist like a Cipriani to come and have one outlet in the hotel to give it a little more, robust feel on the F&B space.
They can have their own brands.
Like for example, Nobu is quite popular. A lot of 5-star hotels gets a Nobu coming in, and they stabilize their F&B division like that. What I see coming, and with the emergence of the Indian weddings, and more people in India getting marriageable, more exposure to the global trends in India, now people will need a catering company like us to be on their side, a hotel, to be able to do good Indian weddings. Because the complexity of the food solution to a wedding is humongous. And hotels, how much ever they try, will never be able to understand, or even if they want to get the expertise of that kind, it is more sensible to work with someone like us, because this is, we have a plug and play. Hotels, if they create their infrastructure, they would use it for say 10 weddings in a year. For us, 10 hotels will have 10 weddings. So we have the capacity, and it's matter of time that a group like a Marriott will call upon us and tell us that why don't we partner block, and they give us the first right of refusal when it comes to doing specific Indian wedding.
Okay, so that type of commercial arrangement. Okay, fascinating. Moving on to a few different trends. I know you said the company is very advanced digitally. But what's your sort of view on the digital trends in the food business? I know it's a broad question, but let's just take manufacturing, for example. I was yesterday at the Future Investment Initiative in Riyadh, and I met a lot of companies around who are, doing farming and different types of food production. There's a lot of trend around plant-based foods and things like that. What are you seeing in the Indian cuisine around manufacturing, around foods and production?
So to me, Indian food definitely has, traveled across the globe and has its own appeal and requirement. Indian food will stay conservative, is my view. Packaged food is going to be the next big thing in the Indian food. I think, packaged food, either frozen or retort packed, is going to be, I think, exponentially growing because of the demand of Indian food globally.
Yeah. Okay. And from a point of view of where you get your food from, where you get your supplies from, do you have farms? Do you have arrangement with dairy companies? With how do you source? What are your suppliers' system and process like? And what's your procurement around food like?
So back in India, we are fairly evolved. We have direct arrangements with the farm. We have, direct arrangements with the English vegetable growing farms, which are, 30, 20, 25 kilometers from our base kitchen.
Okay.
Apart from that, in Dubai, we are still kind of in a process of streamlining our procurement, and our scale in India is very large. Yet we are a startup here, 10 months old, 6 restaurants, catering. But I think next year or so we would be quite evolved here.
Yeah.
Currently we are sourcing all our specialty ingredients. For us, specialty ingredients would be the Indian spices, herbs, which have given the food the edge which we intend to give. We are getting it from India currently.
Yeah. Amazing. So I can't not ask you personally about what's your favorite restaurants in Dubai? What's your favorite food?
My favorite food after Indian is Japanese food. So I like the Nobu, the Zuma, the Roka.
Yeah.
Those are my few favorite.
And you think they're very good here, and particularly in Dubai? They're well known, obviously.
I think they're well known, and they are over successful from the point of view, from the origin where they come to what they are. I think Dubai has a huge, consumption story on the F&B today. While we speak, even COVID times, it was not very easy to get tables at the restaurant, especially at the DIFC and these other locations. Today, virtually, it's impossible with so many tourists come down. It's very hard to walk into a Zuma and get a place, whichever day of the week are you on.
Yeah, that's interesting. But, some people do say that you can get some of the best Indian food in the UAE. Is that true? Or is there no place like home?
No, I think it's quite competitive here. But the distinguishing factor of good and very good food to regular Indian food is quite high. There's a lot of regular Indian food here, but good Indian food is not so commonly seen here.
If you had to entertain someone or celebrate an anniversary or something in an Indian restaurant in Dubai, which one would you pick?
India Bistro, our restaurant.
Okay, fine. Smart diplomatic answer. Sanjay, it's been a pleasure talking to you this morning. Fascinating insight. Love the background. And we'll follow what you do in future. Such a good conversation with Sanjay. Even though they're a very successful business, they also are a startup in Dubai as well. So we could learn so much out of that. And a good insight into the F&B and catering industry as well. Big thank you to Richie and Shahir who put this podcast and show together. I would remind you that you can, if you're listening to this on an audio platform, please do subscribe or leave a comment. Any suggestions welcome on different types of guests, different types of industry, and even if you know a founder or CEO, or if you are one yourself and you would like to be interviewed on Dubai Works, please do get in touch. Also a reminder that we do have the Smashy apps available. They're the streaming platform apps, and all the 141 episodes are on that platform. You can download it on iOS and Android, soon coming to smart TVs. And there's a 7-day free trial. Please do subscribe and test Smashy out and let us know your feedback. See you next week.